last year, would you have smell? Would you have leakage? What was going to be there in the landfill? After going to Richmond and meeting with the DEQ, who regulates the water and the facility, spending 4 hours with them trying to understand what this facility would do, I came away with a different perspective. I live in Reedy Church, as many of you know, a few miles from this proposed facility. I hope that all of your concerns will be addressed as all of my concerns were. It's important, I would say, that we get all the facts first. I agreed from the beginning that it sounded like something that I would not want to engage or be part of until I got the facts. And then I look at it a little differently. So I'm hoping that we'll continue the dialogue, continue the conversation, continue to get educated, and myself included, as we look at this possible text amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood. Mr. Steele, you want to add anything?
I have no comment, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I just want to make sure everybody had an opportunity to add something. And Mr. Taylor, I apologize for not remembering that you were on the board when Spratt was here. That happened to be in the district that I represented, so I remember it a little bit more vividly than others. So, and that is not what we're considering, and as the board has decided, we want to take all the input in from you today as part of our public hearing, and then we're going to, I guess, deliberate and discuss a little bit more with staff, and then we will come back and vote on this next Tuesday at our December 9th meeting as far as approving this text amendment or not approving it. And again, this is only a text amendment that says something is allowed. By saying something is allowed doesn't necessarily saying we are going to allow it. So there is much more discussion to take place, and there's much more information to be put out to the public so we all understand what's going on. So that takes care of the public hearing agenda item number 4. We have taken care of 5 and 6. Mr. Seeley, did you still want to do number 7 without Mr. Akers here?
I mean, Mr. Chairman, the issue with number 7 is I think we've already committed to payment, but I do believe that at this point in time, a discussion as to how we got here, because the proffers that I'm looking at that were presented to me don't really substantiate how we ended up owing $1.1 million on the library. There's a lot of language, but there's no real clear-cut answer to how we got here. So I guess I'm looking for how this evolution took place.
Well, trust me, I'm not aware. Mr. Cully, you have anything to add, or you came in late in the process without just reading it? Ms. Cosby, you were there to help us say, yes, we should do it, right? Was that you, or was that Mr. Emerson? That was Mr.
Particularly,
Emerson.
it was probably, Ben would have been sitting in this seat. I don't know that our office was asked to look at anything in particular, but.
Okay, Mr. Cully?
We haven't been able to find any board action that directed that the library be built. The proffer state that at the 600th building permit, they were supposed to start design and be complete, I think, at the 900th. Am I quoting that correct from memory and discussion? So, of course, it was started much earlier than that.
I agree.
And the facility of that is all set up to be paid for by the Ladysmith Village proffers. And, you know, I guess that's certainly why we're here. We have just about enough money to pay half of the payment in proffers right now. There have been some proffers that have been spent on other projects, so you could reimburse the proffer fund from the general fund to cover those, and we would have the remaining, pretty much the remaining funds to, pay the remainder of the library. But obviously, it's been built, and we've been using it since 2007 when you accepted the deed.
I guess I got a question on proffers, and this really confuses me. I understand that proffers, for example, in Lake Landor and Lake Caroline don't exist because they were there before the proffers existed. But if I'm buying a house in Ladysmith Village or I'm buying a house in Pendleton, and the proffer to the Caroline County is $5,000, whatever is agreed upon, are we saying that? Because I understand the idea of a proffer is to improve roads and schools and so forth. Are we saying that a proffer can be used outside of that? I mean, like, for example, I understand in Ladysmith Village that you have Ladysmith Elementary. I can almost probably understand to a certain extent the YMCA, which is right in the area. Are we saying, though, that a proffer for someone, if I'm moving into Ladysmith Village, my $5,000 can be used down in Sparta?
The code of, well, the first answer to the question is you have to look at what the proffers say themselves. Sometimes the proffers may be restricted. For example, with Ladysmith Village, there was a restriction that the first amount of the proffers that would be collected overall be used to reimburse the then owner for the improvements, including the library. So those proffers, were restricted, and those monies have, if they're not modified, would still be in force. But if there's not a proffer restriction, then generally speaking, the Code of Virginia says that proffers can be used for transportation improvements anywhere in the county, so long as they're in your transportation plan. And then outside of transportation improvements, they can be used for generally other improvements within the same classification as the original proffer within the same vicinity. The Code of Virginia doesn't define what is the vicinity or the classification, and so it's pretty much up to the the local governing body to decide if it wants to spend money from the proffer funds on something else. Does the board believe that meets that vicinity and classification requirement?
So the answer was no.
The answer was yes.
No.
It depends. You can, unless they're restricted by the proffers, they can be spent on other things.
But you're not going to take the proffers from Ladysmith Village, Pendleton, and/or Belmont and use them in Sparta, because that wouldn't pass the vicinity test.
Could be for transportation.
Yes, it can be, yeah.
For transportation.
For transportation, it could be transportation improvements.
There were proffers, yes.
And we're going to do transportation changes in Sparta. Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Black. We'll let Mr. Black finish.
Well, I guess we're discussing this now. Or are we discussing this next week, or are we discussing it both times?
We can do it both times. I think what we really need to do is make sure we kind of codify or define our policy a little closer, because I don't think if there are transportation improvements in one area that the proffers are supposed to go through, that we want to arbitrarily move them to other areas. And I think everybody that pays a proffer is probably paying for schools, sheriff, other county things, but some things specific to their neighborhood.
Right. And I guess I'll make the comment now. I guess the concern I had when I looked at the board packet dealing with this is this last paragraph here. I mean, it was really hard. It says the cost of the library will ultimately be covered entirely by proffers paid by Ladysmith Village as additional homes continue to be built in the future. As the revenue becomes available, the general fund will be reimbursed from the proffer fund. I'm going to be honest with you. Do we honestly believe that?
Yes. Yes. And also, there were some things that were done that were board approved. So these were not proffers that were projects that were spent without board approval. One of them is the turn lanes on 639 at Landor. That money could be reimbursed today from the general fund back to the Ladysmith proffer fund if the board so chose. So there have been some projects that are on the list, I don't have it in front of me, but that have been spent out of proffers that a previous board felt was eligible to be out of the proffer fund. If this board says, we've got this debt in the proffer fund, and we shouldn't have spent those things. Clearly, somebody could make a motion and reimburse, a transfer would go from the general fund and those amounts back to the proffer fund and be accounted for back in that fund.
Okay, let me make a counter argument here then. Even if we don't, this board or any board here on out, make any future commitments, if today there was 300 homes all of a sudden going to go up in Ladysmith Village, the money from the proffers, from that, we have obligations to, right now, to certain projects already, do we not, dealing with proffers?
No,
Is proffer money not paying for an interest-only payment?
No, I don't think so. We actually,
For the Y?
Yes.
no, the Y proffers are separate proffer. There are two, the money that was accumulating to pay for the library and other improvements in Ladysmith Village is separate. The Y proffer is $250 a home in Ladysmith Village, and that's separately accounted for, and it's on that list that Mr. Seeley has in front of him. So we would have had around $900,000 separate from the Y in the Ladysmith proffers today, other than money was allocated out of that by board approval to other projects in the county that could have been paid for by the general fund if the board had done so at the time. But I think building was ongoing, things were moving, the proffer fund was building up, and it was, I assume, and assumption get you in trouble, people thought the proffer fund would continue to build at the rate it was building at, and paying for those needed projects wasn't going to affect the proffer fund. But I mean, there's two ways to really to look at it. Either you wait as future houses are built, and we get that proffer, we'll watch it build up, and we'll transfer 50 grand back to the general fund, or you make that transfer tonight and put it back in the proffer fund and make the proffer fund whole from those expenses that were made years ago.
And I think philosophically, we should decide whether we allow pre-built or pre-building before we get all the proffer funds, or do we wait until we get X number of dollars in the proffer fund before we do anything? In build-out, Ladysmith Village will be able to pay for all the proffers that they have. Will I ever see build-out in my lifetime is another story. And I think that's the real issue. Do we say from in the future, we're not going to commit to spending any proffer money until we have 50, 75, 100% of that money in, or do we continue to do things in advance? And I think that's the decision the board should make, or at least kind of policy, or make that a policy.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment?
You may certainly do.
Thank you. I'm just looking at the list of proffers that were spent. The reality of it is all of the money was used for Caroline County projects, so it's not like someone went off and bought a small island down in the Caribbean somewhere. It was used to better the county in some form or fashion. So whether we make the proffer fund whole from the general fund, or whether we look at this and say, as you just stated, whether we want to look at this differently going forward, I think that's the real issue.
Right.
I don't think it's a matter of doing right or wrong. I think at the time, I'm believing that the people who made the vote, who were sitting in these seats, looked at the same thing that we look at, what's happening 1, 3, and 5 years out, and they made a decision. This is not what they believe what would occur, but it's what has occurred. And that's just, Monday morning quarterback, you're always right. This isn't Monday morning quarterback. We're making decisions based on evidence put before us, based on history, based on what we believe is good business practice. At the time, this was a good business practice. Things were going ahead, and had they continued, as a chairman, we wouldn't be talking about this. It would be done. So let's not look at it as if it's a good or bad, but let's look at it and just say, this is what we want to do going forward, or this is not what we want to do. Because in the end, it's all county money. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I'm still back to, I'm looking for the agreement that pushes us to actually pay this in the manner in which we did, because in all the proffer fund searches, I don't see anything that says that we owe this, when we own it, and what tripped the request for payment.
We clearly owe it in the proffer, in the proffer agreement. Once they turned it over to us and submitted and we accepted the deed, we owed them for it based on the amount collected in the proffer. The proffers clearly state that we would not owe them and have to pay them. We'd owe it, but we wouldn't have to pay them until the proffers had been reached. So, for instance, say the library got started and only 100 homes had gotten built and we'd only collected X number of dollars. We would have to have given them what was X, and in the proffers, then we owed them interest on that remaining balance until future proffers came in and they would get that money. So, in the history of this thing, which goes obviously back before I got here,
I understand that.
The board made one $250,000 payment early on, somewhere right after the building was delivered to the county. But for whatever reason after that, that stopped. They didn't make a request or a demand on it, but the interest did not stop, and the interest continued to build. I received a phone call from a principal in the original development and said, hey, we feel like the county, is in a better position financially, and we need our money. And I'm going, and I'm running around the staff going, what are they talking about? Who is this? What is that? That was what was brought to your attention, and we worked our way through that process to define, all right, we need to go in and get this debt paid off and stop the interest. And how decisions were made in, I guess, 2004, or is that about right? 5, when the library was built. There's nothing in the minutes that speaks to that at all. I haven't been able to I haven't found anything where any of that was, but there's nothing in the agreement that says we owe on, and we talked about this yesterday. I can't find anything that says there's been a drop dead date that commits us to anything. We were committed to it when the county administrator received and signed the deed and took possession of the building. And that I found those documents. And we made a payment right after that, or somewhere in that time period for $250,000. For whatever reason, no other bills came forward. The economy, I guess, went, as everybody knows, in the toilet right after that, and they stopped billing us for it. They didn't stop the interest clock. We have now stopped that with what we have done in the agreement that the board has agreed with them. But I don't know how to go back and fix or resolve all those things and
I
make
guess
any
moving
change
forward
to
that we'll have to find $550,000
next year.
out of next year's budget
That is correct.
by
November 1st.
to make that payment by November 1st.
That is correct.
So right out of the gate.
Or some arrangement could be made, because now I never voted for that proper process there at Ladysmith Library, I'm sure. But I do know that the applicant submitted a rezoning request, and as part of that rezoning request, they offered to waive the fee for the library.
But that fell. That didn't.
And that
was withdrawn.
fell through.
That was withdrawn.
But that was part of something. Now I noticed the Planning Commission just approved something
Different owner.
for the same property, different owner, so I don't know how much leverage we have.
None. Different owner.
Well, that's your opinion that we have none. You
Understand.
may have some, but that's another option. And I think back to what we said before, we need to say, at least as a policy, do we build something, create something before we have all the proper money, knowing we're on the hook? Or do we say, no, we're not going to do that until we have a majority of the proper money, whatever the board decides? I think that's kind of where we need to be to make sure we're not caught in the good times and say, well, we know they're building 50 houses a year, we're going to have, 500 in 10 years. That doesn't always happen.
Can't that be changed by any board?
Yeah.
That can be changed by any board.
Yeah.
So we make a decision today that we're gonna wait for the proper money to be in the bank before we spend it on something. The next board coming in can completely change that.
Right.
So what's the point of?
Well, you're right, any board can change that, but the fact that this board would do something like that should make the next board at least think about it. Now, we can't commit a board after us, you know, theoretically, but I can sign a 20-year lease for somebody, and that commits them for 20 years. And they could come back and say, well, we don't want to do whatever it is. I mean, if you feel that strongly, make sure you're here to say this is what we want. That's all I can say. Mr. Taylor?
Yes. I guess my concern right now is, and back in 2004 when this was built, or whatever time it was, we tended to think of Caroline County as a whole. We weren't so much concerned about whether Ladysmith benefited or whether Port Royal benefited or whether Dawn benefited. We were concerned that the county benefited. And when we approved Ladysmith Village, one of the caveats to approving Ladysmith Village was that they were going to have a school, they were going to have a library, and they were going to have a Y. That was what was said at the time. And it was the general belief, I believe, that those things were going to benefit Caroline County as a whole. Now, that doesn't mean that people from Port Royal were going to drive up to the library. But certainly, the county was going to benefit from that library being there, if no more than a business coming in and locating, and we generating tax revenue that would pay for schools, that would pay for law enforcement, that would pay for fire and rescue. So, to me, I really don't see the issue. As long as we are paying county debt, I don't really see the issue as to which pot of money you're paying out of. There are lots of things that go on in Bowling Green that may not ever affect someone in Ladysmith, or vice versa. Or something might go on in Port Royal that doesn't affect somebody in the Dawn area. But the fact of the matter is, for every penny that's generated, however it's generated, wherever it's generated, it provides services for citizens in Caroline County regardless of where they live. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's a nice library. We need to pay for it. If you have to pay for it out of the general fund, then so be it. And when the profits come in and you want to be reimbursed, then there's nothing wrong with that. But I certainly don't think that we ought to get into a point where we are worried about who's benefiting, what part of the county is benefiting from a particular financial venue. Everybody benefits. And so to me, it doesn't matter where the money comes from as long as it's a legal bill that's going to benefit the citizens of the county.
Excuse me. You're exactly right in terms of, you know, everybody in the county benefiting. I think more what we're talking about is a philosophical positioning of what the board is going to do. Just like we voted last year, basically on a pay-as-you-go philosophy. We had to do the radio system. We committed to doing the school constructions. We said this is how much it's going to cost us. We're going to pay for that up front. We could have said we're not going to raise taxes. We'll take it out of the fund balance and cut some other departments. You know, we didn't. We made a pay-as-you-go philosophy. Whereas 5 years before that, when the economy wasn't as good, we said we'll borrow some money and do things. I mean, it's a philosophical approach. That's really what we're talking about, how we want to do it. Mr. Black is right. We can hold a public hearing and say, this is what we're going to do from now on, and in a year and a month, it could be totally different.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Black?
I guess my concern is, and I understand what Mr. Taylor is, that the whole county is supposed to benefit here, but if there's a couple things here. It says the original proffers for Ladysmith Village said the library was to be built after 900 homes. After 900 homes were built in Ladysmith Village, that library was supposed to build. That library was built after 300 homes. Now, the library benefits everyone in Caroline, I understand that, but the taxpayer, not the proffers, the taxpayers, all of Caroline County is on the hook for that library now. You can say what you want. When it comes back in, we're going to reimburse. Well, that could be, like you said, a decade. The taxpayers are paying right now for a decision that the county went up front. Right. The deal was supposed to be 900 homes, and we're building it with 300 homes. And so the proffers in Ladysmith Village aren't even there to pay for that library, which we're supposed to. So everyone in Caroline County is now paying for that library, and which should be concerning. And that's a problem. We're building everything in advance, and we don't have the money. And then everyone, we've drained the proffer fund, we're draining it, and we don't have the money to pay it back. So everyone in the county now, which was supposed to be proffered by Ladysmith Village, everyone now is picking up the bill.
So let me ask you a question.
Sir?
The turn lane that we did in front of Lake Landor, we should make them pay for it? And, because that was used with proffer money.
I understand that.
I'm asking you, should we say, okay, we use proffer money for that, you guys have to pay us back now? Should we say that?
I don't think that Lake Landor, I'm not sure what the deal was with the county as far as that in Lake Landor. I don't think, and I'll be honest with you, unless the money is there, and we agree to put, when we widen Ladysmith Road, what is the money that's being used to widen Ladysmith Road?
Proffer money.
That is proper money, okay?
Right. Our portion of it.
Revenue share and VDOT in our match was proffer money.
Right.
That's correct. We put up $870,000 and change in match money. We will be getting some of that back, by the way, which will go back in the proper fund, which will help.
But that's only based on what the project didn't spend.
Correct.
But the people from Port Royal may never go down 639.
Right, but that's, see, that's really the philosophical thing I'm talking about. And I'm willing to do either or. I just want to make sure.
I'm not sure that's apples to apples here, because this is in writing here, the original purpose of Ladysmith Village. This is in writing of what it's supposed to be.
And I think you're right, and we should have held to the original proffers and said, no, we're not going to build a library in advance. We're going to wait until you have 900 houses.
No, I totally disagree with that.
I know.
We decided to do that.
Because now we're now stuck paying for a library when we've got a fire department over there that needs to be fixed. We got fire trucks that need, we're stuck paying for a library that was built way ahead of when it was supposed to be built.
But children have benefited from that library. Children have benefited from that library that was built then. They have learned from that library. So, to me, that's not an issue. I mean, what are we going to do?
It is priorities.
Okay.
If I have a fire truck, if I have a house on fire, I need someone showing up. I need my fire truck to be there.
I understand
Okay,
that.
I'm gonna let
The children read the library. I want the children to read the library.
If I want my children well educated, I want to educate them now.
We're going to let Mr. Underwood talk. We're going to let Mr. Underwood talk. 'Cause, I mean, it's a good discussion, and it is really a very important discussion. Mr. Underwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, both my colleagues have very valid points. And the question is, your refrigerator breaks, and do you go out and buy a new refrigerator now, or do you wait till you can finance it, or do you save your money and go out and purchase it and purchase it at that time? There are good and bad on each end. I think back in 2004, I think we were making a lot of progress and growing was occurring. And as that occurred, I think people on the board, I can't speak for them because I wasn't here, but I'm sure they say if this continues, we're going to be okay. And had they gone forward, it would be okay. On the other hand, Mr. Black says that the proffer said, the agreement says that you don't do this until you get to 900. And certainly I can see his point as well, pay as you go. So they both have valid points. It's a matter of what we want to do and interpret now rather than be against each other. Certainly we can agree to look at it from both points of view and take one or the other.
I'd like to go off of Mr. Underwood's pay-as-you-go.
1 second. I'm going to give you the last one, but I don't think we're definitely not disagreeing. We are just expressing different points of view. Neither is right or wrong. We are going to come to an agreement amongst ourselves, and that'll be our position.
And the agreement I would like to see in the vein of Mr. Underwood's comment is, we have 329,000 coming back from a VDOT project, somewhere in that neighborhood. I would just like to see us agree to apply that to the payment.
To the proffer fund?
Because I have to go with Mr. Black's point, is right now, we're going to saddle the general fund with this that we had not planned on, and it's on the backs of everybody else who's a taxpayer. We need to take those dollars that were actually allocated in the proffer fund to go to the library and actually use those funds to pay for the library. So I'm just hoping that we will agree as a board that the money that comes back from the 639 project, that we use that money to pay down what is owed on the library.
I have no problem with that.
Now,
Because I'm not for transferring money from the general fund to pay back all the other projects that were done.
hold on a second, because you're moving off to a good point, but I want to finish. I think we're pretty much finished with approval of the budget amendment related to library payment. We pretty much know we got to pay it. I mean, we're committed. We asked the county administrator to make it happen and save us whatever money. So there's really nothing there that we can go back and give them the bricks back from the library and get our money back. That's not happening. So Mr. Seeley is now moving on to another subject, which we should entertain, and your subject is saying that the road money from the 639 improvements should be allocated back to the proffer fund specifically for the library payment.
Yes.
Okay. And you are going to put that, as they say in Jeopardy, in the form of a motion?
I will put that in the form of a motion. Mr. Chairman, fellow board members, I'd like to make a motion that the proffer money that is rebated from the 639 project be placed back into the proffer fund for payment for the Ladysmith Library.
Is there a second to Mr. Seeley's motion?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Point of order? Yes,
Yes,
Mr. Underwood.
we were talking about the approval. Does this need to,
That still needs to be approved.
this needs to be approved prior
The agenda
to
item
that?
needs to be
The
The
first.
agenda item needs to be
Well,
approved.
I-
Yes, that's correct.
I think it's in lieu of how we're going to make the payment.
I pretty much said we had basically finished that. I guess we need a board,
We need a vote.
we'll need a board motion to approve that.
I just want to make sure we're at a point where we can pay.
Mr. Chairman?
As a second motion.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Wasn't there a discussion on,
Is this just a test to see if I can remember all this or what? Well, go ahead.
wasn't there a discussion on widening the Ladysmith Road even further?
There is, as part of a project the county is looking at,
Okay. Okay,
and I think part of that project will be something totally different, but I understand where you're going.
okay, thank you.
So, point of order. See how many balls we can throw in the air.
I can withdraw,
Oh, that would be
we
great.
can withdraw the motion.
Okay.
I was just looking for clarity so that we understand.
Mr. Seeley is only going to withdraw his motion
I will-
temporarily.
Temporarily.
Because we need to actually, the chair's forgotten to finish the subject we were on. We're going to take a motion for the approval of the fiscal year budget amendments related to the Ladysmith Library, which basically means we authorize Mr. Cully to make the payment he's already made, and we authorize him to identify funds for the next payment. So, is there a motion to satisfy that for agenda item number 7?
I make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Let me just clarify that it's another $50,000, just so we're, is it 50,000, Mr. Cully? 50.
For this year.
For this year, and I just want to clarify so that.
$55,152 would come from the general fund. The rest of the payment was made from the proffer fund. And that proffer payment was made November 1st as a part of our agreement with the original developer to stop further interest.
Okay, so I would just want the amount to be in the motion, the $55,152.
Additional funds.
Additional
General
funds,
money.
general fund dollars.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Motion's made by Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Underwood, to approve fiscal year budget payments related to the Ladysmith Library. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. Mr. Seeley has a follow-up motion to that based upon the proffer funds and the VDOT 639 project.
In lieu of a refund of actual proffer fund money, I would like to make a motion that the proffer fund money from the under expenditure on 639 be applied to the proffer fund to be used in payment for the Ladysmith Library in the next fiscal year.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion's made by Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Underwood. Discussion on that motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. So we have an understanding of where we are. And Mr. Black, we should be here next year to make sure we can make that payment with this board. All right, moving to agenda item 8. Proposed notices from the Commissioner of Revenue for citizens to avoid penalties and possible fines. I understand, Mr. Black, that we've got a letter here from one of your constituents who feels that the county didn't notify him that his car taxes were due because we use proration. And is that my understanding? You have
Mr. Chairman.
A couple of those?
Yeah, I've had probably, I would say, close to a half dozen calls, emails in the last couple of months, I guess, when it's come up. And the issue relates to, apparently, is when people buy new vehicles, a lot of the people, I guess, just assumed that the county had the information, did not go into the county, and the issue is not the tax, the issue is actually the fine. I believe, if I'm correct, the fine is $10 or 10%. And so if you're buying a new vehicle and your tax is, say, $400 or something like that in a year, you're getting fined $40. They felt like they didn't know about it. And so you can see in the letter right there, that's pretty clear as to what's happened. It wasn't just one citizen who called about this. It was several citizens that have concerns about this. And it seems to be with new vehicles. Okay, it's any sort of new vehicle. That's the concern. So if I buy a new vehicle in July, August, okay, that seems to be the concern.
Did you tell them this was your idea to do proration?
Didn't go that far away.
Oh. Just checking. Just checking. All right. I
understand it's a way. My concern is
man, he just lobbed it up there. You know I was going to hit it. Oh, I can hit a fat.
I have no problem with the county making money off proration. My concern is off the fine. It seems like people aren't informed about that. Yes, I understand it's on the website and so forth, but I really don't think a lot of these people that have been caught in the fine. One of them is. Well, I mean, I'm not going to name who it is, but some of these people are outstanding citizens. It's not like they're people who are delinquent frequently on taxes and so forth. So these aren't people that would, a lot of these people aren't getting caught on the list that we just printed.
Yeah, I mean, and I saw Mrs. Carter's response, and she wants to compromise with postcards instead of letters. I'm sure the Progress and the Freelance Star would give us a free ad as a community service to say, once again, we do prorate. I'm sure you would, right? Okay.
Well, not her area of
expertise. When we send in the next public hearing notice, ask them if we can get a free ad, because I think we're spending a lot of money in public hearing notices with both newspapers. We ought to get a free ad. I would, I mean, my personal opinion, we'll let the board decide. But my personal opinion would not be to send out postcards or anything, but make the fine $10. If you're buying a new car, you can afford $10 for being late.
It's not the fine that's the issue. It's the principle of it. People just don't know. I mean, I guess that's the concern. I believe, and I could be wrong in this statement, I believe that other localities, when someone goes to a car lot and buys a vehicle, DMV has a record of that. Those records are sent to the particular localities, if I'm not mistaken.
Is that the case, Ms. Carter?
Yes, sir. The issue here is really the decal itself.
The county decal?
No, it's not. It's not.
Oh, if the county decal is an issue.
Yes,
It's not just the county decal.
I can.
She's coming. Mrs. Carter's coming to the.
I can't send it out any more than we send it out now. It's on the back of their form every year. We advertise it every year. I really will do as you wish. I just need the money. With all the cuts.
You want us to give you extra money because you just saw where the state's cutting
I just can't do it. I'm down. I'm out.
But I mean, you're saying on the, and I haven't looked at it until Friday, but on the back of my tax bill says if I got a new car, I need to pay?
I don't do the bills, sir. I do
that
the
comes from treasurer. I'm
filings.
sorry. Right.
I do the filings.
The thing I have to file by January 1st or 15th?
February
1st?
That's always on there, yes, sir. But
It's on there?
Probation is there.
So
It's
how
on
could
the
they not
filing
know?
form.
If this is their first car they ever bought? I mean, we have to fill that form out every year.
Yes, sir.
Right.
And on that form that we fill out every year is something that says the county does proration.
Yes, sir.
You got to walk through what takes place. And let's pick July. The form goes in February. So people have already filled out their personal property form in February.
All right, here's the
They
key.
buy a new car in July.
Right?
They buy a new car. They may even keep the car that they've got.
But their obligation is to have a county decal on that vehicle in 30 days.
Right.
The sheriff's office has worked with me wherever he went.
Well, yeah, but
Beautifully.
there are
Yeah.
cars driving around now with no decals at all because there's no.
Yes, sir. I
There
agree
is
with
no
you.
enforcement of decals. Plenty of
But
localities.
the
don't
law
do it.
says they should have a decal within 30 days.
Yes, sir. We are
And if
going,
they follow the law,
Then-
they register their car.
And then you would tell them that, oh, by the way, we do proration. Well, the treasurer would tell them, because that's, no, I
Wait a
couldn't
minute,
get it.
let's walk through the process because this is, you buy a car in July, you keep the car you've got. DMV, you get license plates from DMV. You get notified that license plates have been mailed to an address in Caroline. So you know they have license plates. We don't get decals anymore, so it's not like everybody's like freaking out they don't have a decal because most cars don't have them.
yes, sir, they have to have
No, we have
decals.
Everybody-
I haven't gotten a decal,
You're
got a
owner.
permanent decal.
You're not in the
but
county.
you got permanent county decals.
Well, that's because you're not buying and trading and selling.
Right,
Ask,
but,
ask Mr. Black.
but the bottom line is that the decal is not something that anybody stops you for anymore if you don't have it like you did years
They're
ago.
supposed
I beg to differ. We're having them come in the office from the sheriff's office, letting us know,
Yeah,
and it's a $200 fine.
yeah.
There are counties that don't even require decals.
Yes, sir, you
That's
are
not us,
correct.
But that's not us, we do.
We got permanent decals.
And when you show that registration, they're gonna know where you live, and they're gonna look on that window, and if your decal is not there,
Right.
You get a ticket.
yeah.
If you get stopped. If you don't get stopped,
They can actually ticket you on any public street.
Yes, sir, that, we
well,
changed
then,
that.
then let me back up to a whole other issue, because if we're going to get wound around the wheel on this, I'm going to get round around the wheel about the sheriff's office needs to stop the people going into Lake Landor that don't have in-state, that have out-of-state license plates that live here. So if we're going to open up the can of worms,
Well,
let's open up the...
that's an issue for the
same-
That's an
sheriff,
issue
though.
with the sheriff.
That's a sheriff's issue.
I'm not arguing that, but you're arguing a sheriff's issue, and I'm arguing the process to get this so people understand. So let's stick to one topic and move
Well,
forward.
anybody that is here over 30 days with an out-of-state tag is completely wrong.
Right.
By the state police, the local police, the county, everybody.
But we don't do anything about that. So if
No, we do.
I can't answer
I
that.
can speak for that personally. We do.
I can't answer that.
I drove a car with out-of-state tags, and I was informed that I needed to have tags within 30 days. True
well,
experience.
I know that a list has gone to the Commissioner of Revenue and the Treasurer's Office from Lake Landor. We've done nothing. We won't go there.
No, sir, I haven't gotten a list.
Mr. Chairman, may I read this letter?
I
No,
haven't.
no, we have it. The one from,
You may as well, because the step-by-step process is what we have to go through to fix this.
no, we're
and
not
something's-
going to read letters individually now. Now, if it was a public hearing and you wanted to read a letter, yeah. We all have this letter here where he's saying, and he makes his recommendation.
Mr.
it's a lady.
Chairman,
There were
may I
7
make a
people.
comment?
Let me, yes, since we have a guest, Mrs.
The
Carter.
out-of-state tags, I have not been notified of, and the sheriff's office knows that I send them immediately to them and fuss.
All right, the point
But Mr.
we
Chairman-
have in front of us now is, do we, A, send letters, postcards to people, or do we say, that's the law, you need to adhere to the law, or do we say, we'll give you a break and the fine's only $10?
I guess,
Mr. Chairman,
Well,
can I respond?
I guess
first
it's
to
your
Mr.
turn.
Brown? Ms. Carter is here telling us what the office that she does.
Right.
If you abide by what she does when she sends the information out, if you follow the law, then you're in compliance. It's real simple. So how can you say you don't have notice? Why should we do something different? If there was nothing in place, then I say, let's put something in place. But her office already has something in place. Ms. Carter, how long have you been doing this now?
23 years.
23 years. So obviously, she's doing something right.
Well, I
So-
do understand the complaint, and it's
Sure.
because people get very lackadaisical about what they need. I do understand the complaint.
And that's what we're trying to be at least somewhat compassionate about. But I haven't bought a car in a while, but, you know, Mr. Underwood bought a car last year,